Hey guys, Yoshi here. Just wanted to add something before I get into the rest of this video is that some of the changes, I may even address it during the video, is that some of the current um, rankings I have for some of the weapons and exotic armor pieces haven't been exactly updated to the latest patch. I believe in the beginning I go over last word and I have it listed as OP. It's not actually OP anymore. After the current patch, drastically changing its ADS damage, and now it's more favored towards hipfire users. It's not OP anymore, but I do adjust it and address those changes throughout the video. I also think I have like hard light listed as like F tier or something like that later on. Yeah, that's clearly because I have not played in a while, and well, it's not because I haven't played in a while. I just haven't updated my spreadsheet in a while because I did play at the beginning of the season, and I definitely used hard light in Trials of Osiris. So just keep in mind if you do see some weird things, I will be adjusting them throughout this video and explaining the reasons like why I previously may have thought that and why it's different now. Hi guys, Yoshi here. It's been a while since I've made a video. Been rather busy with schoolwork. Just literally, quite literally finished the semester and I wanted to make this video. I haven't been playing Destiny a lot, but I have been sitting on this for a while and I kind of just wanted to make a video about it and share what I have. So I've created this exotic tier list slash guide. I'm thinking about adding like guided parts later on like how you can farm like legendary weapons. I don't think I even have anything here for the legendary weapons, but I do have a change list, exotic armor, and exotic weapons. However, I do not have heir apparent. I did not play Guardian games. I played the first day, uh, thought it was a chore, didn't log on for the rest of the events, so I do not have the exotic. And also, please note that these rankings are based on my own personal play. Just because something here isn't listed as being like good, or what other players may think is like an A rank or an S rank or whatever, doesn't mean it isn't actually that rank or has potential. It's just that I suck with that piece of armor or that gun. I just don't think it deserves to be ranked that high. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. So first off, I actually want to go over exotic weapons first instead of exotic armor. Since I haven't played in a while, I'm a little bit more familiar with the weapons over the armor pieces because armor, I only really play Warlock. I've been trying to get into Hunter for PvP more. Don't really play Titan at all. Honestly, Titan, I only had a Warlock and a Hunter, and the only reason I created a Titan was when Xur sold One-Eyed Mask back in year 2 when it was incredibly overpowered and took Bungie like an entire year to nerf. So that's when I created my Titan and grinded out the Titan and got all the subclasses with it, got some armor so I could use One-Eyed Mask. But don't really play Titan, so that's why you might see my exotic armor list tier list is not what people might think certain things should be. And it's also been a while since I've updated this, so bear with me if some things don't exactly seem like what they should be. So up first we have Sturm, and Sturm PvP I rated as a C+, and PvE I rated as a B. The reason I rated it like this is C+, 110s aren't that great. At least as of the current patch, 110s are not that great. Although Sturm, you can overcharge it with Drain to get 2-tap ability, but the thing is, it forces you to play with double primaries, which in the current meta is not good. because you're essentially, as I've gone over in other videos, you're essentially shooting yourself in the foot by not taking a special with you. And it also forces you to play in a play style that you may not be familiar with or you might not be as good with. I know Cakes, I've said here in my note, Cakes, he loves this gun. Like I'm pretty sure he's made videos about it in the past. However, yeah, I say it forces you to play with Drang, and if you don't like sidearms, then well, you're out of luck. PvE, it's definitely a very good weapon. I have used it in PvE. I wouldn't say it's the best because again, it's a primary hand cannon kinetic. You're not going to be doing a lot of boss DPS or like ad clearing with it, but it is a fun gun to use when you have enough overcharge shots when you've gotten kills with Drangs. It absolutely melts through ads. It's such a fun gun to use, but it isn't like an optimal um, exotic weapon to be using. Next up, we have Crimson. Crimson in PvP, I rate it as a B, and PvE, I rate it as a B+. I say here in the note, it's hard to see what you're hitting. The gun heals and reloads on precision kills, which is true, it does. In PvP, I might change this to a C. I mean, it's only at a B because if you're hitting headshots, it absolutely melts. And not only when you get your headshot kills, is that it reloads the mag and it heals you. It's like a better Suros, if anything. But the only thing is that it's really hard to see when you're shooting. And the other thing is that it's hard to use because it's hard to see, but if you get good with it, it is a very good weapon. However, it's not the best because essentially it is like a pulse rifle in a hand cannon form. There are pulse rifles out there that have better range than the Crimson, so it's a kind of a gimmicky gun, but it is good if you can use it. And I mean, you could translate that my reasoning for its PvP to PvE. It because it heals you on precision kills and reload to mag, you can tear through ads, whatnot, but you're not gonna be doing boss damage, same as Sturm, a lot of boss damage, or against orange bars, you're not gonna be doing a lot of damage. So it's not that great. Next, we have Malfeasance. PvP, I gave it a D, and PvE, I gave it a C. The reason for the PvP is it's just not good. Um, I personally don't like it, even though I've had success with other 180 hand cannons, especially the new hand cannon that was added in this season, the Seraph hand cannon. Malfeasance just doesn't do it for me. I feel like the amount of damage that you do does not um, does not give purpose for the exotic perk that it has, where if you hit, I believe it's 5 shots, if you hit, it creates like an explosion from the taken shots. In Crucible, you're probably gonna kill someone in 4 shots if you're hitting all headshots. I mean, you can hit bodies and like extend your range because of that perk, but the shooting is so weird with that gun. I can't describe it. It's just very uncomfortable for me. I just do not like it. There are so many other better 150 hand cannons that are legendary that will outgun Malfeasance. And PvE, I give it a C. It's okay, could be better. Um, it can be good to help for clearing high-tiered ads, but again, it's not. I mean, it is 180, so it's faster shooting, but it just doesn't like you have to use it to see what I'm saying. It just doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel fast or like powerful or anything. It just feels like a gimmicky type of hand cannon. Next, I have Ace of Spades. I have it as a PvP S tier and a PvE A minus tier. If you don't already know, gun's got radar, outlaw, dragonfly, mental mori, and max range. It's still a beast in PvP, and with the catalyst, it absolutely slaps in PvE. Like the other hand cannons, it's not great at high tier ad killing, but it is good for wave clearing. And it's I mean, I know a lot of people don't use 140s anymore in PvP. It's a 150 meta currently. That doesn't mean Ace of Spades is totally outclassed. It is still a solid weapon. I have used it in Classic Mix. I have not used it in competitive, but it would probably hold up in the ranked modes. It's still viable. You just have to pace your shots and know that you're at a 10 RPM disadvantage. It's radar and outlaw dragonfly mentamori, like it's those combination of perks makes it such a good weapon. It's still good to use, people. Just because 150s are slightly better doesn't mean Ace of Spades still can't compete. um Last word, yes, I know this is OP, but this is because I have not changed it from to the current patch that it has. Again, it's been a long time since I've updated this, but this is currently what I have. PvP rated as OP, PvE rated as F. PvP, it's probably a C tier or maybe a B tier, depending on if you can use it or not. Definitely was an OP tier before this season because of how fast you could shoot, ADSing, three tap headshot, ADS, super fast fire rate, no damage penalty, still hits hard in PvP, of course is useless in PvP. Now it's definitely not as good as it was in previous seasons. Probably going to give it a C tier only because you have to you do have to use it hip firing, and not a lot of good people are good at hip firing unless you're on controller. If you're using controller, last word can be very good, but I'm assuming a majority of people who even watch the videos I put up or will ever watch this video are probably PC players. So that's what I got for last word. Next up is Thorn. I have it as PvP being a triple S tier, PvE being a C tier, and my note is it's good. Let's be real, people. Yeah, it's good. It's a 150 that deals burn damage. And if you have the Soul Devour perk up, or the Devour perk, or whatever it is, you have the ability to two-tap headshot someone and the burn damage will kill them, unless they're 6 uh, resilience. If they're not 60 resilience, or 6 resilience, if you will, then they will die. If they are 6 resilience, they can tank the burn damage, the 2 crit shot and burn damage, or the 2 crit body plus burn. They'll be able to tank that. However, most people are not running 60 resilience. At least better players are probably not running this as much. More better players seem to favor maxing mobility and maxing recovery as well as other stats over resilience, at least in the current meta that I've found. A lot of people will just simply roll over and die when you 2 crit them with a devouring thorn. So, or soul devouring thorn. It's still good. And it's probably going to be even better when it's got its catalyst, so be sure to watch out for that. Lumina, this was also before the catalyst they added, so yes, it has a catalyst now. And honestly, because of its catalyst, I probably make it B tier for both. I do have the catalyst and I have used it. Now that you get more healing orbs, healing isn't rather pointless. It does have a purpose. Before getting a kill and then getting an orb, it was so annoying to do because just how the gun functions. It was just hard to abuse or kind of capitalize as well on the exotic perk. And now that you get 2 of the noble rounds per kill, it makes it a lot easier to capitalize on its exotic perk, allowing you kill one person or you kill one ad, you got 2 rounds, bam bam, everyone's buffed and healed, and then you go on to your business. It's a lot better than it was without the catalyst. Definitely with the catalyst, I would say, yeah, it's a B tier. However, it is still a gimmicky 150 because it requires you to play like support playstyle. combos really well with the Warlock middle tree Dawn Blade. So you have the I can't remember the perk that you get when you're healing people, but yes, it combos really well with the Warlock tree. However, not so much for other trees, but it does combo well if you are using a 72 RPM sniper, because I do believe you can one-shot body shot with a gun such as Trophy Hunter or Tatara Gaze if you have the Lumina buff up. So it is good, but if you want to really capitalize on the perk that you get from Lumina, the noble rounds, it can can force you to play a certain gimmicky playstyle. It might not be for everyone, but it is a good gun. It's not completely crap. Sunshot, I have it as PvP being C and PvE being C+. I know there are other people out there who may believe Sunshot should be higher, especially since Sunshots, when you're shooting at people, like the flinch on that thing, like it hits people hard. However, just because it hits people hard doesn't mean it flinches them hard doesn't mean it's like that great. I definitely think it can be effective in PvP, and you can catch people off with its like big explosions when they explode. It's very good still for PvE, not super great because it doesn't do a lot of damage to orange bars or bosses, for example. However, in PvP, I just don't like using it sometimes. It's fun. It's definitely fun to use, especially now that its mag has been buffed and that the gun can perform better. It's just sometimes hitting headshots, I feel like it just doesn't register as well for sometimes. Maybe it's just a feeling from me. I don't know how it is for other players. I'm pretty sure Frostbolt made a video about Sunshot and he actually likes it. He thinks it's really good. However, I don't know. It just feels really off to me when I use it. I just can't I can't use it, I guess. I mean, I can't use it in the way people think that it makes it like an S tier or something. So I'm not ruling Sunshot out here, but I'm not saying that it's complete trash. So it's not that good, but it isn't that bad. So it's definitely a road. So that's why I gave it C tier. And it's especially a lot better when you get the catalyst because it extends the range of the gun. It makes it like very competitive with other 150s. And last but not least of the hand cannons, we have Ariana's Vow. And I gave it a PvP B plus and a PvE A plus, or sorry, A, not A plus, and it does have the catalyst. If you have the catalyst, definitely think it makes it an S rank PvE. This gun is very good for PvE. It's can be a little gimmicky. It's kind of like a sniper, if you would, for PvP, except it can't one shot to the head unless you have inertia overdrive. OEM no longer has vengeance, so you can't really do that anymore. But if you have inertia overdrive as a Titan playing middle tree Thunder Crash, definitely can two shot or one shot people with the gun, making it very fun. If you have the glancing glare active, perk active. And even without that, you can still two-tap people in PvP, and it shoots relatively fast. It's not like it's very slow. It still feels good when you use it in PvP. However, ammo economy can be an issue, and it's a hand cannon that uses special, so you're giving up using like a shotgun or something like shotgun hand cannon combo or something like that. Shotgun or like hand cannon snipe combo. You're giving that up because Ariana's requires special. In PvE though, this gun definitely is meta. It's meta because of it's an exotic that breaks barrier shields. Come on. If you have the catalyst, it bumps up your ammo capacity from 6 to 9, I believe, and it gives it auto-loading holster, making it a very good weapon to use. If you don't have this gun, I don't think you can get it currently because I don't believe Ariana's Vow is in the exotic loot pool. Hopefully next season they'll add it to the exotic loot pool and you should be able to get it from Xur at that point. Hopefully, because it is very meta and if you do not have it, it can hurt for doing certain builds in Ordeal Nightfalls as well as other challenging activities. All right, next up is the scout rifles, or are the scout rifles, excuse me. First up, we got Mida multi-tool, PvP, A+, PvP, F. And this gun also has a catalyst. If you don't know already, it's like Ace of Spades, where if you ADS, you keep your radar up. You move faster with this gun, and you move even faster if you're using the mini tool SMG. However, that forces you to use double primaries, and unless you are just experimenting or very good with double primaries, you're again shooting yourself in the foot for not taking a special with you. It's good for PvP. It has the catalyst. I have the catalyst. I have not completed the catalyst because let's be honest, the catalyst is useless. It adds outlaw to one of the guns in this game that already has the highest reload speed. So why would you want outlaw? I don't know. However, you do make orbs, and orbs can be useful because of having the catalyst. Um, it's very good in PvP. If you don't have Randy's scout rifle already, definitely recommend using Mida multi-tool to get this gun. I know you can go into momentum control and just use Jade Rabbit. However, if momentum control is not up, then definitely use multi-tool. Personally, I use multi-tool to get Randy's. The reason being so is that if you two-tap someone with Jade Rabbit, which is a 150, most people will not re-peek. They will hide until they regenerate their health. However, if you two-tap someone with the Mighty tool, sorry, Mida multi-tool, if you two-tap someone, they're more likely to repeat because they think they have more health. Because a lot of people don't understand how the shielding and the health um, works in this game. So if you two-tap someone with the multi-tool, they're more than likely to re-challenge you before they have started regenerating their health. So because of this, I'm able to easily, again, get another 2 headshots off and kill a person for an easy 4-tap kill. However, PvE, I don't know why you'd be using this gun. It does not benefit you at all. I mean, it could be a fun gun to use because you move faster and you keep your ADS up or whatever, and like you make can make orbs. It's probably good for clearing like Thrall or something, but it's not a good gun for PvE. Don't use it. Next up is the Jade Rabbit. I have it PvP A tier, PvE I have it as F tier. And the PvE reason is the same as the Moda multi-tool is that the Mida multi-tool. I'll keep calling it multi-Mida tool for some reason. It's has the same issue as the Mida multi-tool in PvE. It's essentially useless. I mean, sure, doing body shots makes or your next headshot do more damage, but it's let's be real, there are so many better guns to be using in PvE. PvP, it's still definitely good because you can 3-tap. It has high stability and one of the highest aim assistance in the game. But outside of that, it's useless. It's got a catalyst, which I believe increases the stability, but it already has relatively high stability, so it's an okay gun. Or it's very it's not just an okay gun, it's a very good scout rifle because of its high aim assistance, I believe. And I've just had very good results when using Jade Rabbit. Next up is Skyburners, Oath, F tier for both. I have the catalyst for it. Even with the catalyst, it's just stupid. It's, as I have noted here, it's like Symmetry, but it's still shit. It's probably a fun gun to use, but since it's not hit scan, it's just not very good. It says that the slugs are supposed to track 2 people, but I only find that the slugs will track sometimes, sometimes they won't. I know the perk allows it to shoot through the shields of the Cabal, but Let's be real. How many times are you like even gonna care about that? Most people just shoot the crit spot on the shield of the Cabal and then just obliterate them. So not much going for the Skyburners here. Polaris, I don't know if the perk is fixed on Polaris or not, but considering this, if Polaris is fixed, like the perk on it actually procs properly, then it is an A minus. And PvE, it's a C. Again, scout rifles not very meta in PvE, but it's not completely F tier because the catalyst makes explosions. It's definitely very good with the catalyst, and you can have infinite ammo if you're not missing your headshots, making it very good in PvP if you're not missing headshots. It's still, as scout rifles are, as all the scout rifles are, very gimmicky, I would say. It's not a playstyle that everyone's used to, but since I'm using scouts, used to using them in year one, at least, it just makes, I just think Polaris is still very good. And then Symmetry, double S tier, might want to drop it down to like A plus or maybe just S tier. PvE, it's definitely good. B tier, it's not the greatest, but you know, with its dynamic perk, you can one in Crucible you can two tap people, and in PvE you can just obliterate things. It's not OP as some people may think because it does require you to get those headshots before you transition into the dynamic perk of the revolutions. It's I would bump it down probably to A plus tier only because sometimes the feel of the gun doesn't feel right when you're getting the headshots. It just the sound of the gun and the feeling it has, I just don't like it sometimes. But it is a good gun. You definitely can find success with this gun. And if you have the catalyst honestly just makes it better in PvE, doesn't really make it better in PvP. I have it. All it does is make it so you can stack the Revolution perk higher or whatever. I mean, it allows you can potentially nuke higher tiered enemies in PvE, but you still can only two tap in PvP based off of the balancing that they've given the gun. So next up we have pulse rifles. Pulse rifles, we have the Vigwing, or the Vigilance Wing, if you will. Still good. It's still an incredibly good weapon. I know some people may not rank it as S tier, but I still believe it's S tier. It's still a good gun. I used this in year one when it was meta, and I still have continued to use it between year two and now year three. It is still an incredibly good pulse rifle, especially because it is a 5 burst gun. And not only is the 5 burst very good, but um, if you look at the other perks, is that anytime someone dies on your team, it heals you. And of course, if you use this in trials, it has the solo perk. If you're last alive, you have an increased like handling, reload, etc. But you will notice the other perk when anytime anyone dies, you will be healed. And if you're playing just good old 6v6 Crucible, so many people on your team die, and it doesn't matter where they die. It seems like they can die across the map and you'll get healed. That's why this gun is S tier for me. It is still such a good weapon to use. And while the catalyst doesn't add much, it does make it full auto, so you can just hold down. It's it just makes it even better. Like it's definitely not SS tier or like OP or anything like that, but definitely is still S tier because you can heal from across the map. It's 5 burst. You can 2 burst headshot or uh, if it's all headshots, you can kill people. PvE D tier again. This is because I mean healing you. It doesn't heal you when you kill ads. It only heals you when fire team members die or people on your team die. So that's probably not going to be happening much. PvE's very easy. I don't really find people are dying as much unless it's high tier activities, but you're not going to bring Vigilance Wing into a high tier activity because there are so many better, more damaging options to bring with you. It's just a pulse rifle. It doesn't have kill clip or rampage or anything like that or any stacks to improve it, but it is a fun gun to use because it has a 5 burst shot. It's not F tier, but it's not C tier because it's not average. It's just D tier. Outbreak Perfected is next. If you don't have this gun, I'd recommend to get it. In PvP, it's definitely a B tier. Probably might change that to a C tier. I do like it. I do think it's a good gun because of its high stability. It shoots like a laser, and sometimes the nanites catch people off guard in PvP. However, I just think there are better pulse rifles out there, especially since it's a 390 pulse rifle and not like a, like a 540, how the Vidge wing is, or, like a 450, how like most of the good pulse rifles are. Excuse me. However, it's it's better than okay, but it's not super good, so that's why I have it in B tier. However, PvE, if you don't have it, I definitely think it's S tier. Um, Still does a ton of damage, especially if you have the catalyst equipped. You're constantly making orbs because of the nanites just killing everything. Um, it's since the nanites stack and do damage on targets, it's very good for that. And it's just very accurate, very easy to use. It's it's just fun. It's a very high damage kinetic pulse rifle. It's very fun to use, does a lot of damage. It can compete in some of the higher leveled activities. It's definitely not a gun to write off. And if you don't know how to get this gun, if you have access to 0 hour, if you complete 0 hour, you will get the Outbreak Perfected. That is assuming you have the quest associated with getting Outbreak Perfected. And if you complete the heroic variant of 0 hour, it will add progress to your catalyst. I'm by 30 or something like that, or 20, I believe, and you get the exotic catalyst from completing the heroic version of 0 hour. Definitely a very good gun to get for PvE. Next up, Bad Juju. I used it with a Warlock build in PvP, gave it a B minus. I didn't play Destiny 1, but I know from what I've heard that it was definitely a beast in Destiny 1. It is not as good, I'd say, as people have hyped up the Destiny 1 variant to be. The Destiny 2 version of Bad Juju, definitely good, but it being a 450 with like not very good range, it makes it very hard to compete with other 450s that have the good range. I do have the catalyst for this because I did cheese for it. Unfortunately, you can't do the cheese anymore. I have the catalyst. I'm able to make orbs. However, I'm not able to get the longer stacks of the perk. It's weird. It's hard to explain, but I do technically have the catalyst finished. Catalyst, definitely a grind because you have to get all the banner placements in the tribute hall. I don't think it's worth it to get the catalyst, maybe to get the orbs, but I don't know. I don't think this gun's very good. Even in PvE, it doesn't feel very good. There are definitely better options available, like Outbreak Perfected. It gives you a small amount of super on kill, but I don't think that amount of super that you get outweighs using other guns that can combo into the shotgun super game perk, the loader, whatever it's called. Forgive me, I haven't played in a while. Um, yeah, they're legendaries. I say they're legendaries that outfire and outclass this gun, so not that great. And last but not least, we have Graviton Lance. Year one, this thing was a beast, I think. I thought it was a lot of fun to use. However, now it's not as good. It's a very, very like niche weapon. I give it C tier for both for PvE and PvP. PvE, definitely when low tier ads are grouped together, you can just chain explosions on and on and on. But PvP, you can't really treat it like a pulse rifle. It's truly a scout rifle, but even then, it just doesn't do as much damage as a scout rifle does in the time it takes you to kill them. I just really think its slow rate of fire is holding it back. I feel like a slight attunement to the rate of fire maybe making it, slightly faster, like not 360 RPM, but lower than 360, like 200 or something, maybe would make this gun slightly better. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure how you would fix this gun, but it's not like it's super bad, but it's not super good either because its rate of fire is really keeping it back. All right, next up we have our auto rifles, and before I didn't have this updated, but now it's updated correctly. I had previously recorded this and I just didn't like the way it sounded in the video, so now it's re-recorded. But first up we have Sweet Business. I have it as PvP D+, and PvE C. The reason for this is that I mean, unless you're running Actium Warrig as a Titan, maybe you can make Sweet Business really good, but I just don't see the appeal in using it unless you have like good sustained fire. But even when you have the sustained fire, is that there are much other better weapons in this game that seem to kill a lot faster than Sweet Business can in PvP. In PvE, it's kind of like a power fantasy type thing. It's not bad, but it's not really good either. You definitely can do a decent amount of damage with it in PvE, but I don't know. I don't think it's a very good gun. Maybe others think it's better than I think it is, but I don't really like it. Next up, we have Surus Regime. Um, it's by my standards, it's a triple S tier, if not outright OP for PvP, and PvE is a D tier. Um, I rank it as triple S tier because in the beginning of the season, definitely was using it throughout, even towards mid-season until I stopped playing. Definitely use this with the spinning up perk. It absolutely destroys people, especially since it's a 600 RPM and it's received that 600 RPM buff. It just it destroys people. Like I don't know how to put it. If you don't have it, definitely want to get this gun because it just currently in the current patch with how 600 RPM auto rifles behave, it just absolutely melts people. However, obviously can't say the same for PvE because, it's not super DPS gun, and since the auto reloading function has been changed in this game, how Lunafactions have been nerfed, Suros really doesn't compete with other PvE weapons. It used to be able to compete back in the day when um, Lunafactions just auto-reloaded your reserves into your mag automatically without you having to perform the reloading action. It was very good with spinning up. You could just like destroy our orange bars and sometimes some strike bosses. So, and the reason I have it pretty high up is because with the catalyst, not only does it out on its own heal yourself after getting a kill, or you have a chance to heal yourself uh, after getting a kill when you reach the end portion of your mag. You can also the catalyst just increases this percentage rate. You just have a higher chance of healing yourself. And of course, if you didn't already know the gun, when you get to the lower half of your mag, you do bonus damage, which is especially good for spinning up. So if you get a kill with the first half of your damage and you transition to killing start shooting other people, not only are you doing more damage because your DPS higher, it's because of spinning up because you're shooting faster. You're also doing more damage overall because you're reaching the bottom half of your mag, and since you reach the bottom half of your mag, you're also more likely to regenerate health off the kill. And of course, this regeneration chances increase further if you have the catalyst. So that's why I rate it as triple S tier. It's very, very solid auto rifle. Next up, we have Cerberus +1. I don't know how you say it. I know there's different people that say it different ways, so I'm not sure. Just covering all the bases there, if you will. F tier PvP. The reason I said this, even with the catalyst, I know the catalyst slows the rate of fire so that you do more damage. But the thing is, like, even if you don't, without the catalyst, it's like, it's a worse auto rifle because you can't like do crit damage or sustain damage really. And you'd be like, oh, it's like a shotgun, so wouldn't do a lot of shotgun damage. Not really. It's like a worse shotgun because you can't even one shot with it. You have to like multi-shot with it. So F tier. D tier, I don't know. Like just use an actual shotgun. Why are you using an auto rifle? That's a shotgun. Just use an actual shotgun. Next up, we have Monte Carlo. Um, I think I had this previously as D, and then I changed it as part of this video. The reason I had it as D before is because that was before the 600 RPM buff, but after they nerfed it so that after getting a kill in PvP, you weren't guaranteed to get your melee back. Now it's you get energy contributing towards your melee back, or it's just like a percent chance of you getting your melee back. But with the 600 RPM buff, since Monte Carlo falls in that category, it also receives that damage boost. So it is better, but it's not what it once was, where you could get your melee back after every single kill, contributing to some very nasty Titan builds. And you could say Warlock builds, but Warlocks have a shit melee and probably better for Hunter builds since you have the one-shot knives and just better melees in general than Warlock. D tier for PvE, unless you're building into a specific build with Monte Carlo, it can probably be good in PvE, but I'm not really big on mailing ads to do damage. I mean, it's possible you can make it work. That's why I don't have it outright on F tier, but it's just not a personal favorite I would be using in PvE to damage ads or contribute to my overall kit. And then last off, we have Hardlight, and previously I had it as F tier before I re-recorded this section. The reason was that this was before the 600 RPM buff, so it hadn't received that yet. But this rating is also after the recent nerf that they added in. Before that, I definitely would think it's like OP or triple S tier. But now with that little change, I don't want to say it's S tier until I get into the game to use it for sure. But I know it's definitely A or A plus for PvP, F for PvE, I'll explain that. A for PvP because it's still very good at spamming lanes and just throwing people off lane control, even though it doesn't like nuke people if they run into the bouncing bullets. It still can cut off lanes and you can still do chip damage, and that chip damage can contribute to your overall info of knowing where players are and are not, possibly. And because, 600 RPMs, I keep raving about them in this exotic tier list. It does work. It does damage. Catalyst increases its stability. Um, I mean, it's already like no stability because it's PC, but I guess on console the no stability or the lessened stability does help. F tier for PvE. I know even though you can bounce the bullets off walls to do double damage in PvE, I just don't really think that's a viable way of doing damage. Just using it kind of feels bad in PvE. Doesn't feel like you're maximizing your kit when you're using it. I think it's good in the Shattered Throne. I think during the Ogre boss, if you're having trouble like managing ammo against, and it's pretty effective against the wizards because you can like nuke their shields with it, but you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot by not taking like a better energy weapon than Hardlight. So I don't think it's a very good PvE weapon, so that's why it's at F tier. All right, next we have are the SMG guns, or yep, submachine guns. First up, we have the Huckleberry. I have it as PvP being D+, and PvE being S tier. The reason for this being PvP, don't really think it's a very good gun. Just really don't think it does it, even though it retains the better rampage damage than other rampage holding guns. This is because of a patch introduced by Bungie, kind of nerfing legendary rampage damage. However, Huckleberry retained the base rampage damage, didn't receive this rampage nerf. Even though it has this, or retains this better ability, I don't really think it's a very good PvP gun. I honestly think there are better SMGs you could be using. It definitely does, it still slaps in PvP, but I just think there are better options available. And for PvE, I think it's like the Kinetic Recluse, if anything. It doesn't nuke shields as well as Recluse does because Recluse is a energy weapon, but it definitely does work, especially if you have the Catalyst because the Catalyst will reload your mag from reserves when you get a kill, and plus it has the better rampage um, that didn't receive the nerf that other legendary weapons did. So it's definitely still a very good gun in PvE. Next up, we have Risk Runner. I gave it a D in PvP and a A in PvE. The reason for this being that, yes, if you get the Catalyst, it increases your range, but suffers the same issue as Huckleberry. It's just not a good weapon. And it contributes even more is that in order to take advantage of its exotic perk, is that you have to be being hit by arc to proc the arc shield, and then you can take advantage of the risk runners like arc chaining damage. And it only really works if someone on the enemy team is using an arc weapon, and most people are probably using mine better still, so that's an arc shotgun. Even if they were to get up close, they would probably just nuke you with an arc shotgun. So not your best friend. But if you are facing, it's a good counter to play against people who are using arc weapons. It definitely gives you some resistance and counterplay to that. But the chances that someone are using an arc weapon and the chances that you run into them before you kill them with another gun it's just very low. A tier though for PvE because it is a lot easier to gear against enemies, especially the Fallen. I think the Hive in some cases, um, arc enemies in general. It's a lot easier for Risk Runner to proc off of that because you don't have to wait for them to use a specific gun. You just know which enemies are arc capable. It's very good in the forges, especially Gofanon and Berguzia, where a lot of Fallen spawn. It's very good on the moon. If you go to Altar of Sorrows, I believe the Hive Wizards and some Hive can proc Risk Runner's perk, making it a very good weapon. Uh, it's it's a good weapon against specific types of enemies, and that's why I have it as A tier. And last but not least, we have Terra Ba, or as many call it, Terra Bad. Yes, it really is that bad, even though it is like Recluse's brother, if you will. Um, C tier for PvP, C tier for PvE, and the reason being that, sure, with the proc perk, it absolutely deletes people and adds a like. However, getting that perk procced is kind of a chore. Not only do you have to keep using that weapon in order to proc the perk, you cannot switch to any other weapon. You cannot even open up your ghost or summon your sparrow or anything like that. If you open up your ghost, that completely rids the perk from building up. You have to start all over again. It's really stupid. I have no idea why that happens. It seems like a design oversight, so I'm not exactly sure what Bungie was thinking when they were designing this. So that's why I give it a C tier. And in addition to the C tier for PvP is that it is a 750 RPM SMG. 750s are good at outputting damage. It's just its exotic perk is really holding it back, and the way its exotic perk functions is really holding it back from being a beast. So next up, we have the lengthiest part of this exotic tier list are fusion rifles. I just grouped in linear fusions with them on it. They're all fusions, they're all the same thing. First up, we have is Bastion. Bastion gave it an A minus and a C plus. A minus for PvP because you definitely can absolutely destroy people with this gun. I know it tilts a lot of people when they play Bastion users. I don't know why, it just tilts people. If you have good control over the recoil or the kick that this gun has, you can definitely melt people out of their supers if you are lucky enough to maneuver that close to them. It's essentially a shotgun with a charge time, but I wouldn't rate it higher than A minus. Honestly, I might drop it to B plus. This reason being that because it has the charge time, I feel like if you're a more competent shotgun user, you're probably going to be able to outdo a Bastion. Like you're probably going to know what to do in order to outdo dual Bastion anyways. I just think the charge time might be holding it back, but it also keeps it in line as being a very powerful exotic weapon. Next up, we have Arbalest. Arbalest, really think it's kind of slept on for PvP, not so much for PvE. I give it a slightly better rating than Bastion in PvE just because it's a little bit more effective. I feel like against shield breaks, I might be wrong because I really don't use any or use these two in PvE. So that's just really these are based off personal preference of using them. Do give it an A in PvP. It's a sniper rifle with a red dot and a charge time. It's it's just good. I think it's very easy to use and not a lot of people, I don't see a lot of people using it. Maybe because snipers are a little bit more favorable, but if you slap on an enhanced targeting adjuster for this bad boy, it's pretty damn good. Next up, we have Cold Heart. I know other people might think it's better, but personally, I don't like trace rifles in PvP. I really think there's better options to be using, so I have it as a C. Definitely think it's viable in PvE. Definitely is a good starting exotic for newer players if they don't have some of the raid exotic type heavies. The reason being in PvE, sustained damage or sustain like as you're hitting a target, if you're not killing it, it does increase damage over time, making it pretty good like high tier ad slash boss melter, if you will. Uh, don't really like trace rifles in PvP. However, giving it a C because it's average, it's not like it's bad, but I just don't see it as being good either. So C tier. Merciless, haven't used this gun in a while. I don't think its perk really even benefits it. It's if you don't get the kill, it just like ramps up your RPM, makes you allows you to shoot faster, and a catalyst adds stability. Sorry, I forgot to cover that for Cold Heart. I don't think Bastion even. I think I got this wrong. I don't think Bastion has it. I'll have to double check on that. But what's it called? Cold Heart gets stability. Merciless also gets stability. So stability definitely helps Merciless, but its exotic perk isn't that great. It really is just like any other fusion rifle. It's like a legendary fusion rifle essentially, but it's like a shittier or better backup plan or something. I don't know. It's a weird gun. That's why I have it at the double C tier. Next up, we have Prometheus Lens, which I think is like it's essentially Cold Heart, but it's fire. It's good for ad clearing and PvE. Don't think it's very good for boss damage. That's why I have the B plus question mark. It has potential. It definitely has potential in PvE PvE. I've used it before. It's like Cold Heart. It's a good starting exotic, but I don't think it has the greatest potential. Moving on, we have Telesto. I'm It's a little favoritism for this one. I do like Telesto in PvP. I give it an A, but there's another reason for that, and you may see it in the note here. Is that people run into the shards and they just explode. People have no idea what the shards do for some reason, and they just run into the shards of Telesto and freaking explode, and you get free kills. And then I give it a B for PvE. It doesn't do a ton of damage in PvE, but it does work. It can melt orange tiered ads and definitely melts red tiers, but it's not really good as a replacement for doing boss damage or anything like that. But it is a fun weapon to use, especially if the catalyst, because the catalyst bumps your mag size up from 4 to 7. I have it. Really nice catalyst. Makes spamming in PvP really fun, especially if you have a lot of special bricks. And the reason in PvP, as I've said before, a lot of people don't know what the shards do for some reason, so I like to put them on corners, like on the ground of corners to prevent people from peeking certain angles. It's very good for shutting down certain lanes and peak spots because you gotta waste ammo to shoot the shards, or people don't even realize what the shards do. They run into the shards and they freaking explode. Next up, we have Wave Splitter. Wave Splitter, if you didn't know, was a PlayStation 4 timed exclusive, or just exclusive, and then they moved it to PC after Bungie split from Activision. Um, it's like a shittier version of Prometheus, Lens, and Cold Heart combined. Yes, you can do more damage if you pick up a Orb of Light, but I don't see the appeal. It's just the Void version of Prometheus, Lens, and Cold Heart. I don't see what it's got to offer. Honestly, get it for your collections or whatever, but I mean, you can use it maybe in momentum control, but I don't see the appeal. Jotun, I know S tier is kind of lenient, but it's good for newer players, I'd say, because of the tracking that it offers. And since it one-shots people and it tilts people, people get so tilted when people use Jotun. I know people will say, oh, the tracking's OP or whatever. No, the tracking is not OP. You can literally just sidestep the the tracking balls that come out of this toaster, and you'll be completely fine. You'll avoid getting killed. It's not like it's super hard to counter this gun. And I give it an A tier for PvE because you can absolutely destroy orange bars. I know I have we have fire team members use this in our week 1 Crown of Sorrows raid run. So definitely a solid weapon to be using. However, I think the quest for getting Jotun is rather difficult. So good luck with that. It used to be a lot easier, but then they changed how forges work, and now vanilla players have access to forges, so they changed up how the questing worked for that. Next up, we have Divinity PvP. Again, like the other trace rifles, it's C tier. Why? It's just why. I mean, it's not like it's bad, but it's not really good either. If anything, it might be D tier because it's slightly worse than Cold Heart, Prometheus Lens, and Wave Splitter because it makes like a crit spot, but the crit spot's kind of pointless because, the person you're shooting is probably just going to be dead from the divinity damage. And then I give it S tier for PvE, if not triple S tier. I'll just make that triple S tier. The reason being is because it's so damn good. It's almost like a must-have for higher tier activities. Uh, because not only can you stun overload champions, you can also just create a big ass orb of effect that acts as a crit spot that allows any other weapon to do bonus damage to it. So it's a really good, interesting exotic weapon. Sleeper, have it as C, probably could be lower in PvP. Have it as B plus in PvE, probably might be considered lower. It does have a catalyst. If you don't know what its catalyst does, I believe you get it from Spire of Stars. Prestige Spire Stars, I think we have a clanmate that has it. Our clan founder has it. It decreases the charge time from 1000 to 700, which I think personally is very good. And it increases your reserves that you can hold for the gun or the mag size. I can't remember. Um, but even so, getting completing the catalyst is very lengthy. It's a pain in the butt and doesn't even compensate for how many nerfs this gun has received in PvE. So, I mean, it's probably still solid, but it's definitely not the OP tier that it used to be. So, might even consider it B minus at this point. I haven't even picked it up in a while. Next up, we have 1000 Voices, 1K, as you may have heard. A minus, double A minus for PvP and PvE. MS Paint is my note, and the reason being is it's a point and click adventure using this gun. You point and you paint around and it blows people up. I don't know what more I can say about it. It's a very good PvE weapon. I believe it's meta in Garden of Salvation for the final boss. Or I think it's meta, at least what I've seen that it can do. And A minus in PvP, again, point and click adventure. It's relatively easy to use and it's very powerful. Queensbreaker is the last fusion. It's a linear fusion and it's bad. It used to be really good when its aim assistance was bugged and it had like double the aim assistance it was supposed to have. You didn't even have to like look at people to kill them with this thing, and then they nerfed it because obviously unintended. And after it's nerfed, it's no longer good. It's supposed to have a catalyst that buffs its aim assistance back, but it's like a really bad exotic, even though you can switch between like different charge times, one that does more damage, and I think the other one like extends your range or something like that. Uh, there are better, like Crooked Fang is literally better than Queensbreaker at this point. So yeah, that's what I got for the fusions. Next up, we have our shotguns, and let me just turn off my fan real quick. Next up, we have our shotguns, and we have four of them. The first off being the Chaperone. I have it as an S tier for PvP and an F tier for PvE. S tier for PvP because it's a great slug shotgun, especially with the perk that it has running Roadborne. I believe it increases your range from 8 to 10 meters all the way up to 14 meters, making it a very long range shotgun if you know how to use slugs, and I absolutely love using slug rifles or slug shotguns. They are very fun to use. As you can see, I don't have the fourth horseman in this list either. I'll just give it a update for that. I do have it. I don't think it's that. It's definitely. I'll uh, I'll address that next after Chaperone. How about that? Chaperone F tier for PvE. I mean, why would you use slugs in PvE? I think that's pretty self-explanatory why it's really bad. I mean, you definitely can have fun with it in PvE, but definitely not a gun to be using. Next up, imagine there's the fourth horseman next. I think it's very good in PvE, definitely like a S tier or something, but I think it's a little glitchy, I think, with the damage output because it actually does damage too fast. And PvP, it's just like a meme gun. It's like F tier. I don't know why you would use it. I mean, you can use it and like absolutely dump on people, but the thing is that it takes pretty much like two shots to secure a kill almost, and it like its ammo economy is so freaking poor. So I mean, you can definitely flex on people, but it's the Fourth Horseman is just not a good gun for that reason. I mean, you can definitely make it better if you have the catalyst, but even with the catalyst, it just makes it a better PvE weapon than it is for PvP. Next up, an actual tiered gun is the Lord of Wolves here. I have it as C tier for PvP. It's not, I know the note, this is an old note, I need to get rid of this note. Uh, this was before it got nerfed. It was definitely OP still, or triple S tier if anything. However, with all the recent nerfs, I don't see it as much. It's probably a little higher at B tier, but there's so many other shotguns that outshine this gun now that it's probably a C tier. For me, I haven't even myself, I haven't picked it up in a while. It's definitely a C tier. I mean, it's definitely still viable. That's why it's not a D or F tier, but it's not the killer that it once was. So C tier. And then PvE S tier, it still does a ton of damage to orange tiered and some boss tier ads. It's still a good weapon even with all the nerfs it has received in PvP. Next up we have is my personal favorite is Tractor Cannon. S tier for both. Reason being, in PvP, it debuffs suppresses people and it instantly kills people if they're in their super if you hit them the right way. If you don't instantly kill them, at least they're suppressed and they're out of their super. It's a very good super denying weapon. I think it's very powerful. I love running it in the competitive modes as well as I don't think I ran it in trials at all, but I've definitely run it in comp and I definitely have run it in classic mix. It's a really fun gun to use. And S tier for PvE, even though it received the change to how it functions where Void no longer receives the increased damage, the 50% buff. Now everything's a 30% flat rate buff. Even 30% is still good. And if someone's not running Divinity and you don't have Divinity either, it's definitely a good heavy to be picking up. So last but not least, for the shotguns, we have Legend of Acreus, and I have B+, B+. Perk, if you have it and you have the completed version, not the like destroyed variant of it, it has the perk of increased radar. I believe it increases your radar so you can see people from farther away. It can be very useful in PvP. However, it doesn't have the same like effect of greatness as Tractor does. Whereas if you miss your shot with Acreus, it's you miss. It's essentially you waste it. However, with Tractor, if you don't kill someone out of their super or whatever, I mean, at least it still suppresses them and they're suppressed and it makes it a lot easier to kill them because it also slaps on that 30% bonus damage buff to them or debuff to them. And Legend of Acreus, you miss. It's like a giant taser or a cannon, if anything. I freaking love using it, even though it's not as competitive as Tractor Cannon. It's like a worse version of Tractor, essentially. And yeah, it can be good. You can make it good, but it's not as good as what Tractor Cannon can offer you instead. Following shotguns, we have our grenade launchers. First up being Fighting Lion, gave it a S tier for PvP and B tier for PvE. Primary ammo grenade launcher, what's not to like? Not super meta in PvE, but it's definitely above average and does okay damage. PvP, definitely very strong. I think it pairs well with snipers really well. I think it's a fan favorite of Cammy Cakes. He really likes using it with snipers, kinetic snipers. I think he uses it with Bite of the Fox or something like that. But I think it's a very good combo with that. And it's just a solid exotic because it doesn't use special ammo, it uses primary ammo, which gives that spammability benefit. It's more lenient if you miss a shot. It's a little bit more forgiving than a special grenade launcher, breech loader launcher, because you have more ammo and it's more forgiving because of that. Next up, we have Prospector. It's like Anarchy, but slightly worse. Um, I don't know why you would use it in PvP. It's because your things land and then they do damage to the surrounding things. Generally, with a grenade launcher, you want to shoot it and have that thing explode, not be like a timed explosion that sticks to surfaces. you're banking on the fact that people run into those nades, and most people don't, or probably get killed before you can even use the um, the effect of the sticky nade. A minus tier though for PvE because it is definitely still good against ads that are standing still, and like orange tier ads and some bosses it can be very good. It definitely is a somewhat of a DPS machine. However, that's because ads stand still and players do not. So Colony, I know it's got tracking, robot boys, but the thing is, if you jump, like if people are jumping, you're pretty much screwed. Other than that, it's a fun gun to use, and the reason I say that, it's very easy to counter. All you have to do is wait till it gets relatively close, and then you just jump up in the air with any class, and then after that, you're probably already far enough away from it where the timer is already ticking, and then now you're jumping and it's trying to get to you, but it can't get to you, and it just explodes or it goes past you and it explodes. Pretty easy to counter. However, I did get this when it first came out. Definitely crutched on it a lot because I was a really bad player. I loved getting it and just spamming like so many grenades. Like it's fire and forget. Like it's very good for new players because you don't really have to learn how to use grenade launchers. You just pick up the heavy and just fire it off, and then you can forget about it. So, and then PvE, it's because of the tracking robots that it brings its score down in PvE. If the robots didn't track and just like were a little bit more, like maybe they targeted the highest tier enemy instead of going towards lower, whatever was closest, maybe it would be a little bit better. And then the catalyst doesn't really help. Same with Prospector Catalyst doesn't really help. And I forgot to talk about Fighting Alliance Catalyst. It's supposed to make its reload faster, but honestly, you will not notice the effects of the Catalyst Reload Edition. Like if you've used it for so long and then you get the Catalyst and then you finish the Catalyst, you're like, what the heck? The Catalyst doesn't even do anything. Um, and then last but not least, we have my favorite grenade launcher, which is Anarchy. F tier for PvP. Suffers the same as Prospector does. You have to find enemies that are stupid enough to walk into the zappy zap barbed wire, if you will. Shocky boys of the Anarchy. Most people are not going to be stupid enough to fall for that. However, it is OP in PvE because you can stick it to bosses and it can do lots of passive damage over time, combos well with other weapons like Mountaintop and um, used to with sniper rifles. I'm not sure how sniper rifles pair with it, but it's very good. For also like add wave clearing, you just pop them down and ads just run straight into the arc chains that it creates. It's a very good weapon. Definitely recommend grinding Scourge of the Past to get this gun. All right, next we have our machine guns, which there are only two of. Well, technically there's three. I don't have heir apparent, so I'm not gonna rate it in this video. Maybe eventually when I do get it, I'll rate it, but I did not play Guardian games, so I do not have it, unfortunately. First off, we have Thunderlord. I give it a B tier for PvP and an A tier for PvE. Reason being for B tier PvP is, as said in the notes, if you don't have Hammerhead, it's definitely a good replacement. Uh, it's a nice sight. It's got a red dot sight, easy to use, like good stability, whatever. Definitely kind of hurts that it takes up an exotic spot, but there's a lot of other legendaries to use in PvP that can compete with exotics. However, gave it an A in PvE. Even though LMGs aren't technically supposed to be for DPS, it's very good for wave clearing because of the lightning strikes that it creates off of kills or shots. And it's a solid PvE weapon. It's definitely higher than a C just because of its clearing capability. And then the Xenophage, probably want to update this a little bit. Give it a D tier in PvP only because the amount of heavy ammo you pick up for the gun outweighs the kill potential for like other guns and the heavy that you pick up for them. I think you only get 6 shots or 4 shots or something like that in Crucible, so that's only like 2 kills because it takes 2 shots of Xenophage to kill someone. PvP or PvE is probably higher now because of the buffs that it's received, and I think it's meta for Garden of Salvation boss because of the damage buff it has received and its overall range and just the fact you don't need to crit enemies for it to do work. So pretty good. Definitely will consider updating this. Next up, we have sniper rifles. We have 4 of them. Izanagi's Burden, now in its nerf state. Definitely think it's still A tier for PvP. You don't really need Honed Edge to like proc super quickly. And the reason I have it as A tier is because you can one-shot body shot with Honed Edge proc. I think if you have Catalyst, you only need 3 shots or 2 shots maybe. I don't think you don't need the full 4 shots. If you don't have Catalyst, you need 4 shots of the Honed Edge to get a body shot kill. But because it's got that body shot potential, and if you're just good, it's got a nice scope, I think. It's relatively easy to use in PvP, so it's a decent gun to use in PvP. I might change that to B or like B plus tier. A, I think is a little lenient. I don't know if it's that great, but it's I definitely think it's competitive. And then PvE after its nerf, I think it's B tier, B plus tier. Um, the fact that Honed Edge takes so much longer to proc, you definitely can feel it. It definitely hurts to use this gun now after the reload nerf. There are definitely more viable options available than this, but the nerf was much needed. It brings this gun in line with the other weapons, much to many people's disagreement. I think the nerf was well warranted. Next, we have Borealis. I'm not even going to cover it. It's bad. I think it really needs to be reworked. I don't even know what it's like exotic perk is like ionic something. That's how bad I think it is. I don't even use it. I don't even know the perks that it presents. I don't even see people use it in Crucible or PvE. So it's D F tier for me. It's not complete F tier because it is a 72 RPM, so it can like do some work, but it's so bad that it doesn't even deserve like an average tier. Darcy, C tier, S tier. C tier for PvP. It is a 140 RPM, but I think there are better options to be using for your heavy. I know a lot of streamers or montage makers use Darcy just because, it's fun to use. It's good for getting those if you're attempting to go for a Darcy 7th column or something like that. But I just personally I don't use it. I don't think it's absolutely shit, but I don't think it's that great either. That's why it's got the C tier. Next is PvE S tier. Definitely does work in PvE. I think it's very good for boss damage even with like the auto reloading nerfs, and it's very good for high tier ad clearing. It's a definitely a meta weapon still in Scourge of the Past, and just I think meta for most bosses that just stand still, or where you can perk its catalyst perk, or proc its catalyst perk. So definitely a solid gun to be using in PvE for boss damage. And then last of the snipers, we have Whisper of the Worm. Uh, Again, like Darcy, I it's slightly worse because of its RPM indifference and the fact that you have to go for headshots really with it. I mean, I know streamers and montage makers use it to flex on people, but honestly, if you're going for like viability here, it's not something you should be using unless you're very skilled at sniping, and that's why it just holds D tier for me. S tier for PvE though, because it's similar to Darcy in PvE in terms of damage output, or like it does more damage, excuse me, it does more damage than Darcy because if you proc its catalyst perk Whispered Breathing, you can do a lot more damage with the gun. Um, it's and it auto loads from reserves, which is a sought after perk, I'd say, because you don't have to reload ever. However, it's not good. I wouldn't say it's very meta for the raid, Garden of Salvation, probably for maybe some of the older raids, but I wouldn't say it's a raid gun, but it's definitely like a high tier activity or mid tier activity gun. So, and it just feels good to use. It's fun. It's a good classic, power tier weapon to be using. So give it the S tier. All right, cruising through. We're down to the last three portions of this guide. So of this part of the guide, I think I'll be covering exotic armor in another video because this video is going to be end up being way too long. So next we have rocket launchers. I have the Warcliffe coil as being A plus for PvP and an A for PvE. A plus for PvP, it shoots tons of rockets, and with the catalyst it increases the tracking ability of your rockets so that they're a little bit more accurate. I don't know exactly how you can test like the accuracy, but it is noticeably increase the tracking when you get the catalyst. I've had rockets go like take a 90-degree turn around a wall to kill someone. Like that's how increased the tracking is on the rockets, and you can shut people down out of their supers, and it's very hard to miss with Warcliffe Coil. Like you're pretty much guaranteed to get the kill if you're using it in PvP. I don't put it as S tier because I feel like there are better legendary exotics you can be using and grenade launchers you can be using over it, but it's a good shutdown exotic for shutting down supers and the like, so it's definitely still good. PvE A tier, not good for boss damage, I don't think, because of how rocket launchers have been like tuned. But it's very good, I think, for like eye clearing and like getting rid of like a bunch of high tiered, like mid-tiered enemies in activities. And I don't think it's very good for higher tier end game activities, but it's definitely a viable PvE weapon. Next up, we have Two-Tailed Fox. I give it a B tier for PvP and a C for PvE. B tier for PvP, reason being that it's like a worse version of Warcliffe Coil, and it's got like more concentrated rockets, so it's a little bit easier to miss even though the rockets track. C tier for PvE, it could be better, it could be worse. It's probably a little bit better for boss damage than Warcliffe Coil, but since it's only good at that, I mean, it doesn't hit me or like strike me the same way Warcliffe does. I mean, Two Tailed's pretty good against Argos in Eater of Worlds. Or Eater of Worlds raid layer. It's pretty good for that during like Prestige when there's the whatever the certain kits you're allowed to use or whatever. Next up we have Truth. A plus tier for PvP, definitely because of the radius of its explosion, like, and its tracking capability. It's literally like a predator missile, if not like a javelin, that tracks people. It's a pretty fun gun to use in Gambit and Gambit Prime, and in PvP as well. F tier though for PvE, while it has that good tracking ability and aggressive explosions, it does really piss poor damage against bosses. Don't use this in PvE unless you're playing Gambit Prime and you're invading, then it's probably good. But when you get to like boss primeval damage, you definitely want to go switch off of Truth to another weapon. And then last but not least of the rocket launchers, we have Deathbringer. Deathbringer is like the poor man's Warcliffe Coil, I'd say. Um, the tracking's good and it can catch people off guard because if you shoot the rocket above people's heads and then detonate it and have the orbs like track people from above, people don't realize it's there because of how quiet it is. But I don't think the tracking sometimes is not as good as Warcliffe Coil, or I've sometimes not had good results with it. It's definitely fun to use in Mayhem when you get two shots of it because you can catch a lot of people off guard, but it's not the greatest. Warcliffe is much more reliable because you can just pop it off and instantly kill people. It's a little bit more reliable than Deathbringer. C tier for PvE can be good for ad clearing, but it's not really good for boss damage, and it's really slow for boss damage. There's definitely a lot better weapons to be using than Deathbringer for boss DPS, but it can be good for ad clearing, but it just doesn't do a lot of damage, so it's not on my to go to or to equip list. Last up, or second to last up, we have our swords, wordline 0, F, and D. I'm not going to really explain it. Like, the whole point of wordline 0 was before you could warlock glide with it. However, you can't really do that anymore because of the sword changes. Um, it's not that great for PvP. I mean, you can still like do the teleporting, like teleport in and do like the super like blade barrage or whatever, but it's kind of like a gimmick thing now. And PvE, I definitely think there are better swords to use over Borderline Zero, so it's definitely not as good as it once was. And then Black Talon, D plus for PvP and D for PvE. It's like a mini Dawn Blade because the bolts like track to people, but they're swords. Let's be honest. You're probably going to be using a more reliable heavy in PvP, probably like Hammerhead or something like that, something more meta, or like a grenade launcher, play of the game. And then PvE, there are better swords that exist than Black Talon. Better legendary swords that are better for doing damage against mid-tier or high-tier ads. So definitely don't recommend using swords, or at least the exotic swords. And then, of course, last but not least, we have bows. Um, Wishender, I have it PvP being B tier and PvE being F tier. Yeah, PvP, it gives you wall hacks when at full draw, but the thing is, it has a slow draw time, which really doesn't appeal to me because of its slow draw time. But then, yeah, you get the wall hack, so that's the the pro and the con there. I just don't really like using Wishender. Sure, it's good for information gain, but its slow draw time really prevents it sometimes from you getting the follow-up shot to secure the kill. And then I don't know why you're going to be using Wishender in PvE. I really don't have to explain why it's F tier. Trinity, I didn't even put a reason for this. The reason Trinity is D and F here is because I just think it's really inconsistent sometimes with its proc perking. I just really don't appreciate using it either. It just feels like a really crap bow. I mean, people have probably found success with it, but I particularly do not enjoy using Trinity. I much prefer to use Le Monarch, which is the next bow I'm going to be talking about. I rate it as PvP B tier and PvE B plus tier. The reason being is that the poison definitely helps. The poison, the whole exotic perk of the gun, like it's reliable, procs reliably. It's very damaging to use, especially against ads. The poison will spread more reliably to lower tier ads. And the fact that its draw time is like insanely fast, that it just feels good. And the sound of the bow feels good when you proc its poison damage as well in PvP. So it's just it's a solid bow, definitely, but it's not super broken in PvP. It's a good bow. It's not above average. It's definitely well, it's not C, it's B, so it's above average, but it's not like almost meta, which is like A tier, or meta A tier. So, it's just a reliable bow. And then Leviathan's Breath, Levy Breath, Levies, put it as B tier for PvP and then D tier for PvE. B tier mostly because you can one-shot people out of super, and then D tier for PvE because it just doesn't do a lot of damage. I mean, sure, it like makes that explosion effect where it pushes ads and people around, but that's not very useful when you're trying to make things stand still when you're shooting them with your other guns. and there's just better alternatives to Leviathan's Breath than, using Leviathan's Breath in PvE and PvP. And the charge time, like the draw speed of the bow, can definitely hurt it in PvP. It might not even be B tier, probably is the C tier, honestly. It might change that. Reason being because the draw time is so long, but I mean, you can't one-shot people out of the super, which is out of their supers, which is nice. So yeah, that pretty much concludes the exotic weapon tier list. And unfortunately, this video ended up being a lot longer than I expected. So what's probably going to happen is I'm probably going to go over the exotic armor tier list that I have in a following video to this one. So be sure to tune in to the next video, and thanks for watching.